All right, we're live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
We're here today with Kyle. Ethan is our co-host. I'm your host, Scott Offord. And Kyle, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself first and how you fit into this whole ecosystem of the crypto mining industry?
This big, crazy puzzle of a world that we live in, man. Well, first of all, let me start off by saying, Scott, Ethan, really appreciate you guys for a couple different reasons. First of all, for allowing me to be here. I'm extremely grateful for that. But secondarily, the fact that you guys are building these kind of platforms in this industry means that you both are becoming huge industry movers and shakers. And it's a real pleasure to be operating in the same circle as you guys. It really
Awesome.
is.
Thank you.
I wish yeah, absolutely, guys. I wish I could say more about Ethan. This is my first time getting to meet you, but I can certainly say anybody that comes through Scott's channels is someone that I have great respect for. So like I said, thank you guys. As for me specifically, so my name's Kyle Herron. I'm the Chief Growth Officer and former well, I shouldn't say former. It feels former now, but I'm the co-founder of Frontier Mining as well. My partner and I started the business about 2.5 years ago, and it's been a pretty wild ride. We kind of started in a very, as I was mentioning this word a second ago, a very circuitous path, which I think is kind of a common theme in this industry. It wasn't just, hey, we woke up one day and said, let's go, try to build massive 200 megawatt data centers. It was, we woke up one day and said, this emerging technology is really interesting. That's where the conversation all got started. And my partner and I, believe it or not, we actually met each other back when we were in second grade. We've known each other since we were about 7, 8 years old. He grew up around the corner from me. After high school, we split off in 2 different directions. He landed in New York. I landed in Southern California. And we were completely out of touch with each other. But we always had this like burning desire to want to chase whatever the future might be. So years later, after college, we reconnected, and I was running a consulting agency in a little bit further Southern California than where I'm at now, which is Los Angeles. And a couple blockchain companies came to me in 2017, and they said, hey, we want to do this ICO thing. And I'm like, what is that?
Right.
And once
I remember that.
And once I found out what it was, I was still like, what is that? It was this really strange time, as you guys probably remember, where you were basically having pre-seed startups get funded with hundreds of millions of dollars. And it didn't really add up the way that it was supposed to in terms of building a real business. But they came to us anyway and said, hey, we want you to kind of brand and market us. So for me, as the savvy businessman that I am, I'm like, okay, well, what exactly do you do? And then slowly and surely after that, I started to kind of delve into this world of blockchain, thanks to these ICO clients that came to me, and then shortly thereafter failed their businesses because they didn't have any real products, which, by the way, was the common theme of the ICOs at that time.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
Yep. Like I said, I mean, this is a world of basically pre-seed startups is what we're looking at right now. It was a world of ideas at the time. It still really is today. But they'd come to us and said, hey, let's see what we can do together. So I fell into the world of blockchain because of that. Shortly thereafterwards, I was kind of doing just some retail investing, and then I met. Well, I shouldn't say I met, but I reconnected with my partner, my current partner, and my really good friend Arlen, who had been back. He was back from New York. He was in school there. He was back home. He was working a corporate job. He was absolutely hating it. They were just grinding him to a T. And he came down to my office and he said, you know what, man, I'm really interested in getting in the startup world. And I gave him the whole razzle dazzle on what I was up to. And I said, why don't you join the team? So he comes and we start working together. And this was the question that forever changed my life and probably got me to this podcast today. Was he said, hey, do you pay for power in your incubator? And I'm like, no, we don't. We were at the time, we had free office space, free power, free air conditioning, etc. Which as it turned out was going to make for a really nice mining environment for at least one machine. So he says, I'm going to bring something down here. And 2 days later, he shows up with this open air GPU rig, which to me at the time looked like PVC pipes and graphic cards. I had no idea what I was really looking at, to be honest.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's pretty much. It's pretty much what it is. That's what most of our data centers are too, just PVC pipes and graphics cards. But he comes down and he plugs it into our office, and we had this little storage closet off to the side where we had put some of our interns. We put them in the closet, and so we said, hey, we're gonna put this GPU miner in there with you. We put it in. The room gets to 95 degrees in about an hour, and before I knew it, I had made my entrance into mining for the first time. So, the long short of the story is Arlen then, he really saw, he was the visionary behind Frontier, and he really saw this being an industry that was going to grow and further expand, particularly on the mining front, because he comes from the IT world and understands, conventional data centers. So he kind of gave me the razzle dazzle and said, hey, I've got this idea. And it was basically to build these GPU machines and to kind of construct custom portfolios and packages for high net worth investors, so that they could have exposure into crypto, but they could have collateralized exposure. And that was really what made the pitch unique originally, because when Bitcoin was at 20K, a GPU miner was a pretty damn good offer.
Yeah.
Especially to these institutional guys who were basically just looking for like your traditional real estate investment return. If they were seeing 8 to 10% a year, they were stoked. And we were saying, well, we'll give you 20% a year. Oh, and you'll get exposure to this new asset. Oh, and by the way, if this asset crashes, you can sell the graphics cards and probably recoup the majority of your investment. It was a hell of a pitch. And so they ate it up. And that's where Frontier really got started, was just basically selling these GPU machines. And then Arlen and I, unfortunately, like you guys probably remember, shortly thereafter, the end of 2017, the market said, hey, we're going to just absolutely go to the floor. Yeah. Yep, exactly. And Arlen and I had just started our business. I had left my previous company to partner up with him to form Frontier. And we're sitting there in Q1 of 2018, kind of with a oh shit moment, if you know what I mean. It was like, wait, we just dropped everything in our life to pursue this, and now the market is completely falling apart. So then it became a question of, well, are we going to do what the great entrepreneurs try to do, which is pivot, or are we going to completely collapse this business and move on to something else? And so what we did actually is we started to find that every GPU miner that was purchased through us, we had to put it somewhere. We had to actually place it somewhere, provide power, electricity, cooling. We were doing it in our parent company's office. We were leveraging some data center space that our parent company owned. Our parent company, by the way, is an MSP, so they've been operating in the conventional data center space for some time. And we just started basically, kind of plugging our clients' machines in there. We threw up a form on our website, said, hey, if you want, we can host your machines too for like 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But some people came through the door and they said, sure, because it was just that crux of the market where people weren't sure. And they were like, well, it's a traditional data center. I need to find a home for this. There weren't that many hosts at the time, if you guys remember. Yeah. And so that's where our current business model began. It was about halfway through 2018, where we were basically just co-locating our clients' machines, our GPU clients' machines in our parent company's data center. Shortly thereafter that, we partnered up with an actual mining facility out in Indiana. And then the journey basically took off from there. So to cut what could be a very long story, I can keep going, believe it or not, to cut a very long story short, after we made our official entrance into the hosting game back in mid-2018 in Indiana, we expanded pretty quickly from there. From that point until now, end of 2019, we've hosted clients and operated data centers and in about 6 different locations in the US. So we've been in Indiana, Ohio, South Dakota, Texas, Georgia, Colorado, and recently in Calgary, Canada. We've worked with about everybody in the industry, whether we've partnered with them, white labeled them, shared clients with them, et cetera. We're definitely, one of the things that we really like to emphasize at Frontier, and here's my 2-second just pitch on what makes Frontier unique, and I hope that other players in the industry can speak to this, is we really just value the growth of this industry more than anything. And we think that the growth of this industry is going to show up, not necessarily from trying to take every single penny from every single client and every single provider, but instead the growth of this industry is going to come from building real, legitimate, customer-centric, sustainable businesses. And that's what we've done. We take a very ethical approach to how we run Frontier. We try to make sure everybody's taken care of along the way. And now we are entering 2020 with about 290 megawatts of power that we've got access to. And we're pretty excited to see what 2020 has in store. So that is the 7-minute download of Frontier. Happy to fill in the blanks, but I should probably stop talking for just a sec here.
So Kyle, I have a quick question for you. Hopefully you've got better power rates now than 20 cents a kilowatt hour.
I can promise you, Ethan, it's gone progressively down over the years. But to that same T, it's been an interesting journey figuring out how to get cheap, sustainable power. That's not as, I don't think the writing is as on the wall as much as people think. And unfortunately, we all live within Telegram forums and now WeChat and WhatsApp, thanks to Scott. we're on just about every platform. I honestly I was barely ever using WeChat. And then Scott's like, hey, I'm going to start a hardware group in there. And I'm like, oh God, not another one. But this journey to finding cheap power, it's not just like, hey, let's just go down to like an oil drilling site in Texas and start grabbing flare gas, because you're also now looking at from the side of there's a lot of different factors going into finding good cheap power. It's not just how cheap can be, it's what kind of environment and what kind of political climate is it in, how much power really does exist, how long will that power last, who is the power provider, have they been in the power game before? So one of the things that we've really emphasized, Ethan, and there's one of our that's actually one of our team members, Steven. Hey, Steven.
All right. Hi, Steven.
Steven's a brilliant guy. Great to have him on our team. But what we've definitely found is that it's not about being the cheapest. That's what we've really figured out, Ethan. It's about finding that middle ground between customer centricity, sustainability, and cheap power. And if you can build all three of those and maintain uptime for your clients, yes, your clients are not going to be paying 2 cents per kilowatt hour, but they're going to be much happier in the long run.
That absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
And Kyle, from what I know of you, you seem to be able to handle the small players and the big players, everywhere in between. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about, how you take on some of those smaller miners? Yeah,
that's a great question, Scott. We really look at it as we treat everybody the same. Our business, believe it or not, was actually built off of clients that had between 1 and 10 miners, believe it or not. We made our first major, kind of revenue mark as a company, just taking the little guys because nobody else would take them. And we're like, well, hang on, rest of the industry. If I take 100 little clients and I can onboard them and turn them on, in a matter of a couple of weeks, and it's taking you 6 months to find one big client who, by the way, is going to be grinding you down on price, and is going to be looking for every which way to cut corners because the big guys obviously have more leverage and more buying power, and I don't blame them. We said to ourselves, hey, let's go for what the low-hanging fruit is. So that's really why we had, began with building relationships with smaller miners. But the thing with smaller miners too that people I don't think give enough credit for, I think Chad Louderback came on and chatted about this a little bit, is that the small miners tend to be the most savvy. They have to be. Because if they're going to survive in this space, they have to be able to know, how to buy the right machines, how to make strategic sales of those machines at the right time, and then they have to know how to run them appropriately, whether that be certain mining management software, firmware, software, etc. So throughout the experience of working with the little guys, I think it's actually taught us a lot about how to stay lean as a business in this space, and how to survive in a market that really isn't, at least in today's market, is not really well suited for small clients.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like staying lean and nimble is, especially through the tough times, is a skill that, these guys are building up. And I think it's going to be valuable for them in the future. As mining grows, as farms grow, there's going to be farms that are going to be looking for these guys that have, been through the trenches and the mud and the roughest of the rough, to keep their farms mining optimally. And I mean, a lot of people don't see it that way, I guess. They're just seeing it as surviving, but I see this as industry job training that, nobody
100%.
else can give you. Yeah.
100%.
Before I go into the next question, though, I would like to thank our sponsors, NovaBlock. NovaBlock came here in North America and opened up a pool back in August 2019. And in 4 short months, they've managed to become one of the top 15 public mining pools in the world. They believe that as hash rate shifts from China into North America, they want to be a part of that decentralization. They want to offer their customers transparency and education so they can be informed on what pool works best for them. Thank you, NovaBlock. Thank you.
NovaBlock. So we have a special offer today from our sponsor, NovaBlock. You can go to their website. On the top right-hand corner, there's a sign up button. When you're signing up, use the invitation code OFFORD18, OFFORD18, and you can get a permanent reduction in your mining fees down to 1.8%. And also, if you have a lot more hash power to throw at it, you can get even a better rate. So just talk to Vincent at novablock.com there and give it a try. Thank you.
Pretty good deal. Pretty good deal.
So Kyle, I wanted to ask you, now that you've been through what you've been through, what are some just kind of hard stops that you've put into place to make sure that, the next 2 years are going to be successful for you in mining?
You mean the strategies that we've put in place so we can stick around, basically?
yeah. I mean, you've survived the crypto winter. So
survived 2 crypto winters, it feels like, because the last couple of months have not been super friendly. And then the thing that people also didn't take into account is that, yes, we did survive the crypto winter, but we also survived the crypto summer. And I don't mean when crypto was, booming. I mean, when we just had the hottest summer on global record a couple months ago, and I was trying to run data centers in Georgia and Texas, it presented a lot of challenges. So kudos to our team. I'm very, very fortunate to be working with some really talented people who are able to, kind of mitigate really challenging scenarios. But secondarily to that, fortunately, clients get it too. And that's one of the things that we really value in our business. So when you talk about, Ethan, how have we made it this far, knowing that a lot of roadblocks have been thrown our way, I give a lot of credit to our clients. I really do. Because it's a hard space, number one, for them to operate in. And then number two, it's even harder to host your miners in a data center that is not going to guarantee you 100% uptime, because I can't give you that cheap rate if I do guarantee you 100% uptime. So it's a constant ebb and flow of trying to understand, as a client, shoot, this market is really tough. I need to make sure my miners are online 100% of the time, because I'm looking at this on an ROI clock, and I'm looking at, and a lot of miners, unfortunately, they liquidate really quickly. So they're basically looking at what Bitcoin's value is today, not what Bitcoin's value is going to be in 5 years. It's unfortunate, but they have power bills that they have to pay at the end of the day. Then on our side of the table, we're sitting over here like, man, like this is tricky. Like, you have these super hot summers. You've got data centers that are going to experience issues, whether it be from heat, from power failures, et cetera. And so how do we weather those storms? A lot of it is by creating a really transparent, open relationship with our clients. And by creating that collective consciousness as a business, where our clients, just like a client in to a degree, like a client, think of it as like an advisor role in a young company, where you get to see some of how the company works. That's the relationship that we have with a lot of our clients. And I think because we bring them into the fold, because they've been with us since day one, they have a greater appreciation for what we do, and they ride the waves with us. And the storms that have brought challenges to us, our clients have been our biggest supporters through that time. So that's part of the reason why I think we've been able to get through what we've gone through. Now, secondarily to that, of course, like, one of the easiest ways to weather a storm is by creating strong industry relationships as well. And I would say that's the second piece. But if you'll note, like, the 2 first pieces that I mentioned have nothing to do with good infrastructure and cheap power, because to us, you can't survive unless you have good infrastructure and relatively inexpensive power. Like, I almost look at those as being the lowest common denominators in this space. If you don't have that stuff taken care of, there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to. You guys hear that?
Yeah. Somebody's house burning down.
Somebody's house. Oh, there it goes. Okay, someone's house was burning down. Like I said, hot summers, man. But as I what I basically was saying is that the lowest common denominators in the space are having great infrastructure and inexpensive power. Like, we know that those are needed, but how do you differentiate yourself beyond that? And again, great relationships with our customers, and then great relationships with industry players, for sure.
Right.
I look at guys like Scott. I'll give a couple shout outs here. I look at guys like Mason from Blockware Solutions, guys like Joe Stefanelli, guys like Jim Musgrave. I mean, there's a long list of people that we've gone above and beyond to make sure are continuously taken care of, for 2 reasons. Number one, they're friends of ours. Bottom line, everybody in this industry has become a friend. If you guys have been to some of the conferences, you see how familial this organization or this industry really is. There's definitely an underlying brotherhood, sisterhood type of thing going on. Realistically, more of a brotherhood, but we're working on getting more women. We're working on getting more women in this industry. Frontier is actually about 40% female, and we're pretty proud of that. And
That's
we're continuing.
Awesome.
continuing to try to pump that number up. But in any case, what I was mentioning is that, we really try to make sure that we take care of everybody that we work with, because we find that in this industry, what goes around comes back around. And if you burn one bridge, you're likely going to burn a lot more. So we definitely value relationships in this space a lot. And then I think, of course, like the third piece, going back to the hard truths, Ethan, of running a business and mining is, we've definitely spent a lot of time figuring out how to effectively run a mining center. Now that we've been able to operate in multiple states and multiple jurisdictions with multiple techs, and with just a huge long list of different miners that we've had hosted with us, I think we've figured out a lot of the best practices now in terms of what it takes to run a business in this space. We're far from perfect. I mean, I think there's a long ways that we have to go, and many players in the space have to go operationally to being able to make a client feel like they are, your top priority, because the fact of the matter is that when you're running a big data center and you've got clients who are as small as 1 to 5 miners and clients that are as big as 1,000 to 2,000 miners, a lot of what we try to do is figure out how to be operationally efficient enough so every client feels like they've got equal value and weight within the organization. And as a startup, that has as a startup like Frontier, that was only built 2.5 years ago, but has now scaled to where it's at today. I think operational efficiency is a really key component in the data center, in the infrastructure, in the power, and in your relationships with your clients. So finding the balance between those 4 pieces is definitely something that we continue to strive for, and we're pretty excited about where we've come today and what we've currently got under our roof, because we're doing that, I think, pretty well now, and shout out to our team for making it all happen.
Nice. So one thing that I wanted to ask you is, what do you think will be the backbone of technologies of the future?
That's a great question, Scott.
I know it is.
It's for some reason I feel like it would be a question that I would write. When I look at the technological backbone of the future, I think that mining is actually driving a lot of that trend, and that's why that question is really interesting to me. So here's the thing, and I'm not a data center guy, so I'm sure there are many smarter people than me out there that could answer this question better. But here's what I do know: I know that data centers are very expensive, and I know they're overbuilt. It's been a reality for a long time, and the problem is, because they're very expensive and they're very overbuilt, you end up having an end cost out the door to the client that is also very expensive. And because the price is so expensive to a client, you now also are limiting the client's ability to diversify their risk. And what I mean by that is, if you look at what traditional data center infrastructure is, in an ideal world, you're distributing. I don't know why that keeps going off, guys. Sorry about that. Did you mute yourself?
I was letting you know that my mic was actually turned off. I don't know where it's coming from, but
I don't know where it's coming from either. I think there's a good chance it's coming from here. But if you look at traditional data center infrastructure, the bottom line is, if you're trying to create a decentralized storage, right, for example, and you want to do a private decentralized storage, so you're basically distributing your assets across multiple physical locations. In the crypto and blockchain industry, you've got companies like Filecoin, Scott, help me out here. It's the decentralized storage system behind Filecoin. It's IPFS, right?
Yeah, the Filecoin.
It's the interplanetary file system, right?
Okay.
IPFS, where basically what you're doing is you're just distributing assets across multiple nodes on the network effectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at, now we've got the ultra decentralized world of crypto mining, right? Where basically you can effectively power the network out of your home with the IPFS. You can basically partake in this decentralized storage model out of your home, and then you've got the fully other side of the spectrum, the polar opposite of the spectrum, which is traditional data centers, which are these massive physical locations that really, because of their size, infrastructure, weight, etc., cannot be as easily distributed. So logically, there's a middle ground to that, and that's where I think that like the technological backbone of the future is to be found. And so what I really see what I see the future looking like is actually I see data centers looking a lot like mining centers, where you've got things like, let's just break it down to really simple terms, like take a storage container, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is now these 40-bay storage containers have been converted effectively into mining centers. Well, think about it like this: if we're talking about technological backbone of the future, every major city of the future wants to become a Singapore, right? It wants to become on the bleeding edge. It wants to be able to have computer vision in its stoplights. It wants to be able to have blockchain running its logistics systems. I mean, these future cities are going to require a bunch of computational power, but the only way to be able to acquire that computational power is going to be theoretically by effectively renting it from data centers. But the problem is then you have the latency issue, right? Where if the data centers are so expensive to build out, they're going to, at the end of the day, they're not going to be as widely spread out as we would like. And so then when you have something like a Google Stadia or Google Stadia project, which is Google's cloud gaming initiative, theoretically, if you want to be able to decrease latency and run a game on your computer at full speed, you need to have a data center, and that doesn't have any local hardware. You need to have a data center that's within a stone's throw from your location.
Sure.
But again, very challenging to do because of the cost to build. And so it gets to my final point, which is that what if there was a world where we were able to take your traditional mining infrastructure and you're able to basically put it adjacent to all major cities? Right. And then within that mining infrastructure, you would have traditional server infrastructure. So like, say you took a 40-by-8 storage container and filled it up with Xboxes and you put it directly next to, a suburb of Los Angeles. And then all of the kids in that local neighborhood now could basically play an Xbox without any latency issues. But on Microsoft's side, they're able to deploy it for a significantly cheaper cost than if they were to go build a full data center. So it's a very long-winded way of saying, Scott, that I basically look at the technological backbone of the future as being really fragmented and really distributed. And I think it's going to become more effectively distributed by being able to use the practices that we've taken from our industry.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like it has a little bit of commonality with the 5G network that's coming up, and how instead of having these towers that are further apart, you have smaller, towers closer together, and really just more of like a mesh system going on.
100%. Yeah, that's where I see computational power going, and of course, the logical next step from that is, okay, so we've decreased latency, we've decreased cost to build, which means we're decreasing operational cost to the end customer. Well, now we've got, what's the next question I always love answering, and I'm actually kind of curious to hear your guys' perspective on this before I give mine, because I preach this all the time. What do you think the evolution of mining looks like? And what I mean by that is not necessarily what does the next S17 look like, but more of what does the future of monetizing computational power look like? I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that.
That's a good question. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an expert on it, but I think, like you were saying, there's all sorts of different types of things that could be computed. Whether it's self-driving cars or cryptocurrency, whatever needs to be processed. Video rendering. So yeah, I think, I'm just really excited that we are in this, the very beginning, the startup of this new industry that's coming around, yeah. So what do you think, Ethan?
I'm a firm believer that we're going to move away from conventional and traditional manufacturing materials, copper, gold, silicone. And we're going to segue more into these new novel materials, graphene, carbon nanotubes, which is basically graphene, and optics using glass instead of copper wire to transmit data. An interesting fact is a lot of people think that electrons move through wire at the speed of light, and that's not actually the case. They actually move at about 1/3 of the speed of light. So by simply replacing the wires in a transmission system with fiber, with optics, we get we can run like 99.9% the speed of light. And that would speed up even the greatest technology that we have today by a factor of at least 3, just simply by switching over to those technologies. So I believe, the next big breakthroughs that are going to be happening is we're going to switch to different manufacturing materials and manufacturing technologies to increase our compute power and increase our efficiency. A lot of people don't understand is, what's slowing that electron down through that wire is resistance, and that resistance gives a side effect of heat. When light travels through glass, it has very little restriction, very little resistance, and doesn't give off any heat, or very, very little heat. And so that, just by simply changing those materials will increase our efficiency by, magnitudes of thousands. And that's where I see things going.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah.
Ethan, hell of an answer. Scott, your answer sounded a lot more like mine. We are clearly not as intelligent as Ethan is, but I think it's fascinating to see where the two worlds blend, right? Because Ethan basically talks about, well, okay, you guys are right. Like, yes, the future computational infrastructure is going to be distributed. It's going to appear in many forms. It's not just going to be mining. It's going to be all these different ways that we can trade computational power. But Ethan looks at it from the perspective of how do we do it faster? Right. And that's the same perspective that I look at it from, is how do we do it faster, which is why I was talking about this mini distributed data center model where you've got containers theoretically placed adjacent to major metropolitan cities where you can decrease latency for local applications. And that kind of leads into basically how I look at it, Scott, which is the same way you look at it, which is that mining is not the end all be all for the trading of computational power. And that's what I look at mining as being. That's all it is. It's me saying to the blockchain network, let's personify blockchain for a second. Hey, blockchain, you want to use my computer? Yeah, sure. Can I pay you a bit for it? No problem, man. Unfortunately, you can't set a flat fee on what the blockchain network will pay you. It would be nice, but the blockchain network, of course, thanks to difficulty in the price of Bitcoin, is constantly fluctuating like what you actually get paid at the end of the day as a miner. But that being said, I think that there is going to be a model that exists where we are able to create a much more attractive offering to institutional players who don't necessarily want this incredibly volatile exposure into crypto. And that's where we get into the world of basically high HPC, or high processing compute, high density compute. And that it will manifest in some of the things that Scott said, which is like film rendering, AI, deep learning, cloud gaming, cloud computing, cloud storage. Like, there's a long list of items that have massive computational demands. And I think that what we're going to eventually get into is, my guess, you heard it here first, guys. My guess is that a lot of the miners that we are currently buddies with, especially the guys who have, significant capital, deeply involved in this space. My guess is that within the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to start seeing 20 to 25% of their operation dedicated to specific GPU infrastructure that can be utilized for these other purposes. The reason I say it's not going to happen today is because the demand for it is not there yet. That's the primary issue. The demands for it is not there. There's not enough, there's not enough basically independent film rendering jobs out there. Like the major players, like the Pixars, et cetera, they're going to, massive data centers like Switch, for example, out in Vegas, and they're saying, hey, we'll put our GPU infrastructure there. But when we start having like, your buddy down the street who just got a brand new Canon Red and is shooting in 8K and can't edit his film locally, I wouldn't be surprised if he went to a marketplace, like a computational marketplace, and said, hey, I want to go rent this GPU for a 3-hour period to render my film. Right. Well, the cool thing is that, hey, Scott actually owns that GPU. And even better, that GPU is in my data center. So now the cool part of this ecosystem now is that Scott comes to me and says, hey, Kyle, I got you. I'll pay your 13 cents, 14 cents per kilowatt hour rate. The reason Scott's paying more is because I have to offer him traditional data center infrastructure. But the even better news for Scott is that he is not trying to mine Bitcoin anymore. He is selling computational power, which has, I mean, how do you value that? You can only, like, there's no, basically, it's, you kind of value it based off what the market's currently paying. And right now, a Pixar will pay 35 cents per kilowatt hour to render a film. Wow. So now we're talking about Scott, instead of going and making, 10, maybe $3-4 a day with an ASIC, he's making $20-30 a day by doing film rendering projects, and he's making it in a fiat currency, which I know to all of like the Bitcoin evangelists listening to this podcast, like, no, not fiat, but like I still think fiat has a place in the world, and if anything, go convert it, like go buy Bitcoin with it. But at least you know that you're going to be getting guaranteed return versus one day I make 20 cents and one day I make $3. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. I think within the next 2 or 3 years that might be a reality where we don't have to do that kind of thing based off of a fiat dollar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
We'll see. Hey, Kyle, it's been a great time talking with you. We're going to wrap it up here. And thank you for personifying blockchain like that.
Yeah.
But so why don't you just quickly tell us how we can find you online and how our audience can follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Well, again, Scott and Ethan, it was a real pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me here. Great to chat with you guys. I could talk about mining all day with a couple other industry experts. So it was a lot of fun. In terms of Frontier, so we've got a couple quick exciting updates I want to let the audience know about. We're launching a new facility in Calgary, Canada that I mentioned. It's a 200 megawatt natural gas site. And it's going to have all of the bells and whistles of a great mining site. So we're really excited to share that with the world and get that going in Q1 of next year. We also have our facility in Colorado. That's an indoor facility, 90 megawatts with approximately 15 megawatts of infrastructure ready to roll. So if you're looking for a home for your new machines, please feel free to reach out. In terms of how you can find us, we're pretty easy. You can actually just go to Google and type in Antminer hosting. We're the #1 result on there, which we're pretty proud of. But you can also go to frontiermining.co. And you can find me on basically every single platform that exists out there. But a really easy way to reach us is just by going to our website and submitting a form or chatting with the little AI bot that's on there, and he will get you right into my inbox. So we're excited to continue the conversation. And if the world of mining that's listening ever needs anything, I always say I'm happy to help, whether it means growing Frontier or not. Like Scott and Ethan, I think we're all here to collectively grow this industry, and we're happy to do it any way we can.
Absolutely. Well, great. Thanks for coming on our show.
Absolutely. Thanks again, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks again to NovaBlock, novablock.com. They believe that as mining is shifting from China to North America and other parts of the world, that it's going to become a leader in the industry. And you can try out their pool. We have an offer right now. If you go to their website, sign up, and type in offered 18. That's OFFORD 18 while you're signing up. Then you can reduce your pool fees down to 1.8% for life. Or like we said earlier in the show, if you have a larger amount of hash power that you can put to this pool, you can even negotiate a lower fee than that. So thanks for everybody for watching.